Hello and welcome back to the show. This is the Great Outdoors Photography Podcast, episode 161, where I'm going to be talking about monthly print edition releases, what this is all about, and what you can expect going forward. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm your host, Brent Bergherm. Let's get to it. This is something I've been working on for quite a while now, and it is almost embarrassing how long it's taken me to get these finally released. But what I'm talking about is my monthly editions print releases. What I'm looking to do is release a new print each month. They are going to be collectible and limited edition, and they are going to also be uniform in size, so it makes for easy updating for your decor. As it relates to, a new print each month, you can expect on the first of the month, if you're on my email list, you're going to see an email that kind of looks like what we have here on screen. And for those of you in the audio only world, I invite you to hop on over to the YouTube if you'd like to watch this, or just jump in the Facebook group or on my website. All those links are in the show notes, and you'll be able to follow along with these images, with just everything that we're talking about here. But every month, I'm looking to release a new edition, a new piece of nice fine art collectible printing. And that will certainly help me keep printing, how I love to print. And certainly if we get some big items, I'll go on my Epson as well. But for now, these are going to use up my ink on the Canon at least. And then I might transition to printing everything on the Epson. It doesn't really matter, quite frankly, which machine I use. They're wonderful machines, and we can get some really good, awesome prints out of them. All of the prints are going to be sized 13 by 19 inches in this series, what I'm talking about. There will be a 1-inch border, so the print area is going to be 11 by 17 inches, and so that will allow for easy handling and framing, and hopefully this is going to be something that you would be able to say, it goes easy into a frame without even a mat. You don't need to have a mat. But if you do, things are going to be consistent with that idea. So if you wanted to swap out, or if you wanted to buy a collection of frames, you would be able to have some uniformity in the idea of the sizing and how they are portrayed in your home or office. I'm going to sign each of these prints too and number them. They are going to be limited to 50 each for this release, for each of these releases. Again, there's one a month, and so there's a new image coming out each month. And I have a backlog. You can see here, this one says print of the month, July 2023. And so what I've been doing is I've been collecting this little bit of information, I guess. I've been planning for this for a while, but it's finally coming through and going to be released here. And I've got, of course, this new one we're going to get to here for November. And I'm really excited about going through these images. And then as we continue with December and January, we're going to be able to just talk about one on a release. And I'm just really looking forward to doing that. All right, the prints are going to certainly be archival quality, using some fine art paper either by Cans Infinity or Breathing Color. I have found the Cans Infinity photographic to be one of the best all-around papers that really does just an awesome job of delivering the color, delivering the black and white, delivering everything I'm looking for in a photographic print, and it does it beautifully well. But I've also recently found, somewhat recently, within the last year or so, have been really testing out Breathing Color. I love their canvases, and I love some of their matte papers for very specific uses. But for my all-around general use, I definitely want to think about using their Barita paper, which they have released on a roll media, and they tell me that sometime, hopefully this spring, we're going to be able to see that Barita paper in the 13 by 19 sheet size. So I'm looking forward to that. But of course, I'm not going to hold them to it or anything like that. I've got a great paper in the Cans Infinity. It's just if I can move over to that Breathing Color, then I'm going to do that. Now, certainly the Pura One, is it Pura? Optico One, Pura Smooth and Optico One. Those are the ones I have tested, and they're great, wonderful fiber-based matte papers. And for some prints, definitely those are going to be, we're going to be using that paper. But for my overall all around, I really like the Barita photographic by Cans Infinity. They're on version 2 now, by the way. I print each copy of each image myself. This is definitely not anything going to a print lab. So it's all done here on this machine or on that Epson over there, and I print these myself. Now, I suppose if I were to have a problem with my equipment, I could print it up at my office up at school, but of course the plan is to print it here to keep things simple. Each of these prints are made to order, so when you place an order, it might take another day or two for me to, get it into the working process and make it happen for you. But these are then limited to 50. So once they're sold out for this size of print, that's it. Now you could buy a larger piece. Those are going to be unlimited editions. But as it relates to these collectible pieces that I'm releasing each month, this is something that's limited to 50 only. And once it's sold out, it is sold out. Please take a look. I've got a link in the description or the show notes, and you'll be able to click on that page that will take you to my website, and it describes all of these things in grave detail so you can see exactly what is going on. You will get a certificate of authenticity with this as well. I'll sign the certificate, and you'll be able to see and match up the numbers and all that other good stuff, so you know you're getting a good piece that is nicely controlled, and we've got good record keeping as it relates to what numbers are out there and what you're going to be able to get as well. All right, the initial release sale, what I'm looking at doing first off, for the first month, this is going to be through 2023. So for the first month that the individual image is released, it is automatically on sale. It's $10 off. And that's just on a single print item. But if you're going to buy 2 or more, I've got a code here, ME2+, and that will give you another $10 off per print if you buy 2 or more. So that is, again, through the end of 2023. We've got a little bit of a bonus for you just for the end of 2023, that ME2+. Again, $10 off per print when you purchase 2 or more. What are all these about? Let's take a look at the initial release. So if you're on my email list, you've already seen this. You've already had a preview of what these are all about. And you're able to have seen these 4 prints and read all about them and understand where they came from, a little bit of the story behind them. And that's, great. I hope to grow that list so people can be on the cusp. They can be the first ones to see what's coming out and what the print is. And of course, that story behind it. So that is already hit the mailbox for those who are on the list for the November print as well. That November print has been released, and we're going to talk about it here, but those folks on the email have already seen it. All right, so I had 4 starter prints. I released these a couple of weeks ago. The first 2 are from my garden here this last summer, the summer of 2023. And then the September image is actually from my sabbatical road trip that I took 2 years ago in September 2021. And it comes from Badlands National Park. And then October's image is from about 6 years ago. So you can see these images, sometimes they're going to be really recent images that I've made, and sometimes the photographs come from ways back in my archive. And let's dive deep now into each print. That's the July print is titled Dreamy Dill. The August print is titled Radiant Allium. The September print is titled Day's End at the Badlands. And the October print is titled Streams of Grace. So let's take a look at Dreamy Dill. And what I like to do, I'm going to also be talking about as you receive that email. If you're on the email list and you get the email, you're going to see a little tidbit about the design and composition, a little bit of commentary about that, and then, of course, a little bit about the background of the image as well. So let's talk a little bit thinking about the design and composition of this photograph. I created this photograph on our farm in the summer of 2023. And what the fun part is, this is almost a mistake image, really. I was changing my battery when the camera powered back up, and I saw something similar on screen, and I was just like, yeah, this is awesome. I like this. This is really cool. So I then took that as a little bit of a leap, diving off a little bit, and I explored these types of images, these types of compositions, where there's a significant portion of the frame that just has all of these different items just thrown way out of focus. Now, these are the little tiny buds, the little flowers of the dill that are really, really close to the macro lens, and so they are in front of the main subject that I'm shooting. I just love the color here, the yellows and the vibrant. They are vibrant and punchy with just enough to pull back. It keeps them from being annoyingly loud. So yellows, to me, they can get to the point where it can just be really vibrating off the screen. And that's what I'm saying here. It's soft enough to where it takes you up to that ledge, but it's not just like shouting crazy at you. At least I don't get that sense out of it. I also appreciate the chaos created by all the little bits that are scattered about. This creates a pattern, or might be better to call it a texture, that textural background element. Not really necessarily a pattern, but we just have these things that's a punctuated texture. And it feels fairly random. I love that too on this image. It is about in that case, the chaos that is the natural garden. And we definitely let our gardens go a little more natural rather than just tying everything up and keeping everything perfectly aligned and everything like that. So this is my view of the garden all wrapped up in one single photograph. Now, on the background ideas of this image, I chose this one as my first of the monthly releases because it is one of my first photographs that I made after deciding to do these releases in the first place. Plus, I greatly appreciate the play of that bouquet, those wonderful out-of-focus elements and the nature that they embody. That is played against the explosion of the lines, and then those are rendered beneath it or behind it. There's a very true sense of layering. That's another design element that could be considered up in the previous section. But anyway, a very true sense of layering is created with this photograph, adding to its visual interest while staying simple enough not to be a distraction. Now, a little bit of a thought on some of the post-production too, that I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of an ideal about. That little piece in the rule of thirds, roughly the rule of thirds area on the left-hand side, I did bring a little more attention, a little more clarity, a little more texture, a little more attention to that. And then as you kind of swoop your eye around a little bit down, and you follow up that main twig line, and then it goes to that main star pattern thing. And then if you were to launch up back to the left and then arcs back down following the pattern of those bursts of those little blooms, I created a little bit of a light visual path there as well. It's so subtle you don't even really see it so much, but now that I've mentioned it, you're probably looking at that and say, oh, okay, I think I see what you're saying there. It's extremely subtle, but what I wanted to do is give your eye a little path, a little journey to follow. And then I did a gradient approach from right to left. So on the right-hand side, there is no application of this, and on the left-hand side, it becomes more and more intense, and that is a negative clarity. What that allowed this image to do is on the right-hand side, we have those deep greens in the upper right-hand corner, and by graduating across the entire width of the image to full-on negative clarity, now I can't remember exactly what I set it to, but it does create a little bit of an ethereal, little bit of a less focused, more foggy kind of approach. And when I did that, I got exactly what I was hoping for, and that is that bit of a transition from something a little bit solid, for sure, to something a little bit more just this ethereal in nature that it's just looser, and it's just really airy and free, and it breathes on its own almost. All right, let's go to the next image. This is the Radiant Allium image. The design and composition ideals on this one. On this cool morning, the sun seemingly rose a little extra early. The sky was clear, and I needed to work quickly. Thankfully, our chicken barn provided a little extra shade, basically the time frame, because that sun came up over the horizon, and there were some areas behind it that were coming in a little bit brightly lit. In fact, in this image, you can even see in the upper left-hand section, there's a little bit of direct light starting to hit right in this capture. So I got it right at the edge of where it was becoming unacceptable because the light was just becoming too harsh. So that thankfully that chicken barn was doing its job of giving me a little extra shadow so I could just really work this scene and get the image I needed to get. Oh my goodness, hallelujah. All right, it's all the way across the creek though, so it is a distance away, so it's probably, I'm going to say at least 50 if not 60 feet away, and so that it only provided the shade for just a little bit. It was just a few minutes worth, but it was just enough. I love the radiance that comes from this subject. The color is radiant, the flower buds are radiant, and of course the pattern that those little stems create, this radial pattern emanating from the center, making for a glorious explosion of color. The little flower buds create a great pattern as well. I think that they also create a bit of a visual cadence, a little bit of a rhythm there, and I like that too. It is something that is not necessarily super, like a metronome where it's just where it's just absolutely even, but there is a bit of still that idea of a rhythm created with either the lineup of them or just how they go across. Some of them are in focus, some of them are less in focus. And there's just a little something there, little clusters maybe we can call it, of a rhythm that they create. They are interrupted by only having some of them in focus, so I kind of already mentioned that. And if they were all sharply rendered, if I had gone with a much deeper depth of field, I think it would have been a bit too chaotic. You wouldn't know what to look at. And by having it rendered this way, where some of them are in focus and some of them are not in focus, you don't wrestle with what you should be looking at. I did try this with a focus stack. That's partly what took me, kind of the few extra minutes to get this thing just right. And so trying to get that focus stack where everything's in focus, and it was just too much. It was way overbearing. It was too heavy on the idea of just so much to feast the eyes on, and it just wasn't very happy at all. I didn't care for that. All right, well, we have a little bit of the background. We have a plot in our property that's called the no-till garden. It's a holdover from the previous owners. Each year, and that's been 3 years now, and this thing is still going. This is really cool. Each year we have a variety of volunteer veggies such as chard and onions and, of course, these allium. There's bunch of other stuff there too. I'm just mentioning a few of the more prominent ones. I've walked past these blossoms so many times. It's right next to, I have a little pathway, driveway type thing between the shop, but beside the shop and that goes between this area and the shop. And so I'm always walking by these every spring and summer. And as they mature during the summertime, it's just the ideal of what can I photograph, when should I photograph, how can I do this? It's just something that's constantly working over my mind every time, whether I'm driving by on the lawnmower or walking out with a shovel, whatever the case is. There's just always this constant impression of what am I going to do with these things? And well, here you go. This is it. So this is my approach to this whole notion of just what this is and what this is about. And there's a lot behind the scenes, I guess is the best way to put it. And when it's time, of course, to make it, all I have to do is wait for the right light. So I've formed my goal. I've formed my opinion about how I want to cast my vision for this. And then it's just, all right, let's make sure we have the right light. And of course, that's about waking up early and getting it going when the sun comes up, right at the break of dawn. All right, this next one, at the Badlands, design and compositional thoughts. The photograph is all about lines, shape though, and color and texture. There's so much things going on in this image. There's also some layering going on, which is hugely important to properly interpreting this image. The major lines either point to or support the sun. So certainly that horizon line, certainly hugely major. But we've got two of these mountain ridge lines, the one coming from the middle portion of the left-hand side of the frame, and you just ride that ridge, and then it kind of your eye catches a ride onto the sunburst going on up into the sun. Or if you start in the middle bottom and you rocket upwards and you follow that line. Now, of course, you can take that line off to the right-hand side, but what I like to think here is both of those areas, the middle right-hand side, the bottom middle, both of those lines converge, and there's a little bit of a pointing upwards right towards the sun. Definitely that stuff was all on purpose. This is not something that I got lucky. When I'm out there and I'm looking at the scene, I'm trying to think, what is it about this scene that I want to say? And then how can I best say that? Well, I wanted to talk about the texture and the lines and just the overall shape of the landscape. And that sun, that setting, creates the interest that helps finish that story, as it were. That texture just comes together, giving me the photograph of just the right character. All right, a little bit of a background. I was nearing the end of a 28-day road trip that took me to some of America's most remote and wild places. Now, this is in the lower 48, of course. We have Alaska, we've got Hawaii, we've got a couple other great places that are way more remote than what we can get in the lower 48. But anyway, I was definitely looking forward to returning home to my family. I was still about a 2-day drive away, but it's on my mind. I mean, I'm just in the last few days. I had a few last images that I needed to create at Badlands National Park. And it's interesting how one's outlook, I think, especially as I'm here now 2 years separated from it, I can look at it a little more objectively, I think, and how your outlook shapes the images that are made. The end of a journey was near, and that sentiment, I think, is echoed in this photograph that showcases the day's end. I don't know when I'll be able to return to Badlands, but when I do, the images I create there will certainly be an extension of this experience. When you're open to new ideas and new connections, the sky is literally the limit. And that's what this image represents for me. The end of one day, but also the promise of things yet discovered and yet to be experienced. Oh my goodness, I just cannot wait until the next time I'm out there. Now, I have some plans here for the coming breaks that I have here in my schedule, and I just cannot wait till the next time I'm out there. The promises of things yet discovered and yet to be experienced. That's really what it's all about for me. I just love the new discovery. I love to experience these new types of things like this. But even if I were to go back, you can say, well, that's not new. It's still going to be new, and it's still going to be an extension of this starting experience. And I'm going to be able to uncover and unpack even more awesome things because of what's happening, what's going on there. All right, let's go on to the October image. So our design and composition ideals are thinking here. We often think of time passing before us from one side to the next, that basically horizontally speaking. When we're thinking of composing an image or when we're thinking of composing a design, it's all too easy for us to get caught in the idea of just going horizontally as we want to depict time. Because as we walk past something, that is how we experience the passage of time in the horizontal landscape, as it were, the horizontal experience. The movement in this photograph, however, is moving upwards or possibly downwards, depending on your perspective. And that's the direction the trees grow, of course, and that's the direction I avert my gaze to when I need inspiration or encouragement. His grace abounds, and it is always raining down on us. Absolutely. And this is the type of image that starts to make me, it gets me in that type of frame of mind. It gets me, while it's extremely ethereal, it gets me real. It gets me understanding more about purpose and all that other good things about life, about photography, about all of these types of things. And to recognize every breath, in my view, every single breath is a gift of life from God above. And that is something that I wish to cherish and I wish to treasure. And this image helps me think about that, helps me be reminded of that kind of idea. All right, a little bit of the background story on this. Some fleeting moments. That's one of the great powers of photography. When a moment is captured and an idea is expressed. And with this, the time, of course, with this time, the opportunity to go back and grab another shot becomes impossible. Well, the reason is this tree farm that I photographed this at no longer exists. So we now have a fleeting moment. We now have an ideal that was able to be represented with a subject, and that subject is no longer possible. Now I could go and find other like-minded subjects for sure in other locations. It's just where this one was in Boardman, Oregon, it's no longer possible. So the owners transitioned it to growing something completely different a few years ago. And this image speaks to me about the passage of time. It's rather poignant to note that this subject is just simply gone. I'll have to go somewhere else if I want to make an image like this again. But that passage of time, that adds to the story, because now we know that it is impossible to go grab this again. And it is impossible to just, I suppose I could go and plant my own trees, and in about 6 to 7, 8 years, because these were fast-growing cottonwoods, I might have enough to do something like this. But as far as the depth of the trees, and how many there were, and all that kind of stuff, no, it's not possible. And so we have that idea of the passage of time, but then we have the passage of time through the exposure. This is in-camera movement, intentional camera movement, where I'm moving the camera upwards. And I was on a gimbal head, which really helps keep you going just beautifully straight up and down, rather than if you're just on a ball head or what have you. You might have some jiggy jags, which we'll see in the next image, actually. But so we have the passage of time that can be created just because of the way the image is, but now the whole idea of the story behind the image as well. That's one of the powers of photography. That's one of the reasons I love photography. And yeah, I'm sure that's possibly one of the reasons you love it too, because it helps us remember, it helps us take stock and not take for granted the passage of time, especially when you're photographing people. Oh my goodness, that is so precious and so important. All right, let's get to the November image. So this is the image of the month here for the month that we were playing catch up. Whoops, I went backwards. We were playing catch up this whole time. And now it's time to take a look. What have we got with November? It's a very similar type subject, isn't it? When things are planted with production in mind, they are put into rows. Very long rows in this case. So this is still at the same tree farm. The patterns become predictable, and the rhythm created, to me anyway, it can become fairly monotonous. It's like, what do you do how do you make something creative out of something that has been photographed ad nauseum by I don't know how many photographers? And then when things are so evenly spaced, that just starts to drive me batty a little bit sometimes. So this rendering of the subject, through the use of more intentional camera movement, once again, it alters what's important in the scene. Usually the tree trunks are so strong that you can't get away from the solidity that they provide. And that certainly can be a good thing. You can use that for good in your image, for sure. To have something so solid and structural can be very good. But I wanted something else. I wanted to create something that really brings forth the color in this scene. And with the angled strokes, this also brings in a different level of energy, whereas the other one was completely just straight up and down and just really beautiful with virtually no texture. It's just all about streaks of color. Just a totally different level of energy comes across with this one, where I've got it's almost about 45-degree angles that we have these, it feels like brush strokes going. So previously we only had the vertical movement, and with a sweeping motion of the trunks aren't necessarily erased, but the tree trunks have lost a little bit of their importance. The composition element as a tree trunk is diminished a bit. they no longer command the scene, but they support it for sure. The color, at least to me, absolutely takes front and center command of this scene. Without those tree trunks, certainly I think it would feel completely chaotic and just wild and crazy. But we do have still some rendering of some vertical elements, which are those tree trunks, and that still provides a bit of structure, but it's not as if they were just solidly rendered. I think this image would be completely boring if those trunks and the leaves and everything were solidly rendered. All right, so with that previous image, Streams of Grace, definitely it was made at the same location. And I just love how the same subject can create two very different photographs. I'm still using the same technique, intentional camera movement, but we have two very different photographs. I was there with a friend, and I started the day exploring a variety of wide-angle shots. At the time, I had Canon's 11 to 24 millimeter. Oh my goodness, 11 millimeters rectilinear on a full-frame camera. Yikes, that is crazy. However, I desired something drastically different for this subject. Basically, I had fun with the explorations of what we were doing there, but it just didn't quite do it for me. I was testing out that lens and it was great, but those images, while interesting, they didn't rise above. They didn't just have that extra ounce of juice that we need to make that work. So the subject had become mundane in my mind, and I wanted to do something different, potentially unexpected. I simply wanted to bring a new understanding to the subject to you. So I introduced this intentional camera movement. By abstracting the subject into this type of photograph, it forces you to find a different style of meaning or different type of meaning, and to have a different value coming forth. It's a different set of criteria altogether for why we take value in an image. An abstract versus an obvious, rendering of the image, a realistic rendering of the subject. It just totally changes our expectations. And a photograph like this is way more open to interpretation than one of just a grove of trees in neat rows. Does it make this type of image more widely appealing? Or does it do the opposite? I don't really know. So do more people like the image as compared to the row of trees? Or are there less people that likes an image like this? I don't really know, but I do know that I would love to fill my wall. This is the entire wall with this image, so that I can have a massive rendition of it. And maybe someday I will. I literally just bought some material to test at work that is a wallpaper material. And boy howdy, am I looking forward to that. I think that'll be awesome to do. All right, and now it's time to print. So we're going to now shift over to Lightroom, and we're going to print right here on this machine, and we're going to talk through some of the thoughts, and then I'll bring us back to finish it up here. Okay, it's time to start printing these, and so I'm going to be using the Canon here. Let me get it powered up. And I said these, but really it's just the one image I'm going to be printing, this image that we have on screen. And so to do that, you can see I've made a collection for my monthly prints, and I've got the 2023 prints here. And so I've got most of them already figured out. I've got a few here that I just don't know when I'll be having them be a monthly print. But anyway, we're going to stay focused on this. Going to come over here to the print module within Lightroom. And you can see I've already got it set up to do the print. So to do that really quickly, just do the page setup and tell it to format for, really I just want it to format for this particular printer. All right, then I've got the 13 by 19, that's perfect. Telling it to do a landscape, and then we're done with the page setup. If I needed to, I could go further into the print settings, and this is going to be where I've got the print dialog box that is the printing aspect. So if I were to hit print, this also comes up, but I can just kind of preset these items and what I need to make sure I'm doing. And they have changed things in the latest OS. It's a little bit annoying, but anyway, coming down here to printer options, and then I need to be able to select quality and media. And for this particular paper, it's the Barita photographic. Now, like I had mentioned previously that are on version 2. I still have a little bit of version 1 left. And so I can't imagine they're going to be that much different. But we definitely want this photo paper and then photo paper plus semi-gloss as my media type. And then I'm going to keep my print quality high. It's coming out of the rear tray. So all of those items are set. And I don't do much different printing. I don't usually anyway. So that is usually something that stays the same, but it's always good to double check and to know where these things are coming from. Over here on the other portion of the print module, we can see we're just doing a single image. It says single image / contact sheet. Gonna do rotate to fit, which doesn't really need to be done. I have also already cropped these in the develop module to the 11:17 aspect ratio. So they just come in without any cropping here in the print stage. I would not want to be making a decision for cropping in the print stage. I want to do that in the develop stage. So you can see down here on the bottom, all of these that are finalized, I've made virtual copies out of them. And by making a virtual copy, I'm able to have that custom cropping and a couple other items that are particular to the print. I can do those in the virtual copy and still leave the main image, as it were, untouched, or not have these settings built into the main image. All right, sounds like the printer has gone through its little initiation setup type thing, and we're good to go. But you can see here I've got the 1-inch margin like I had mentioned before. So it's 13:19 with a 1-inch margin all the way around. And gonna hop down here to finally say print to. What am I gonna print to? Well, I do the JPEG file when I make all of the previews for on the website and other places like that. But of course, now I have to go to the printer. I want this to be ink living on paper itself. I'm going to choose a print resolution of 240. That's definitely well enough resolution for this machine. It happens to be perfect calculation into the overall resolution that is the dots per inch on the machine, but it's just going to give me a nice round effect of what I'm looking for as it relates to good sharpness, but also it doesn't take forever to process the image. Now this is a fast machine. It's not going to take that long, but anyway, 240 I have found to be a really good balance for these things. Now, this is one of the reasons why I normally, or historically I should say, have said, no, I don't want to print from Lightroom, because my output sharpening, or they call it the print sharpening here, doing standard, low, or high, what does that actually mean? I love the control I have in Photoshop to where I can specifically set the radius, the threshold, and so on, and be able to get exactly what I want with my unsharp masking or my smart sharpen settings that I can do as a mode of doing output sharpening. And I can really dial that in. And so when I do my big prints and the like that on the big printer, I'm still going to be doing that kind of a thing. But for these prints, I've decided, I'm really going to be getting some good predictability coming through on what this is about. And so as long as I can understand what these settings truly mean and what they're likely to do, I guess, I'm going to be happy with these. Now, I've determined I like the matte. The glossy, I don't know. I just like the way the matte comes out, even though this is technically considered a glossy-ish paper. I'm going to like the matte, and then the standard is enough. If I were to go high, I think that would probably be just a little bit too much. And low, you'd hardly be able to tell anything. On an image like this, quite frankly, you're hardly going to be able to see much of a rendering of what this does because there's so few actual real edges. So on an image like this, it's not going to be that big of a deal. And on an image like the Streams of Grace, this is pretty much irrelevant because there's nothing sharp in that image. Okay, finally down to the piece that is the most important is our profile. And so our Kansan Infinity Fine Art is what the CIFA means, CIFA. The Pixma Pro 10, that's my printer. And then the Barita 310. So it's a 310 GSM. So grams per square metered. So that's exactly And then it tells me here, photo paper plus semi-gloss. So I've already had that set for my media. And then, of course, we have to figure out which intent do we want, our perceptual or our relative. I usually do relative. We can see perceptual preserves out of gamut detail, but may change in gamut colors. Proof copies matching this color profile will use their own intent. All right, well, that first part is what's really important there, where it says it preserves out of gamut detail. So what that does, what perceptual does, is it takes your color that is from no saturation to full saturation, let's call it. There's a portion of that potentially that the printer cannot reproduce. And so perceptual, what it will do is it will take that entire spectrum of color and it will compress it down like a spring. So each thing just gets a little bit more closer together, as it were. So that's why it says it preserves out of gamut detail. So those portions that are out of gamut, they will now become in gamut. That means the printer can actually reproduce these colors. But because it pushes everything down like a spring, it says those portions that are in gamut, it may alter those colors a little bit because they're getting compressed. And so this is done for every hue. It's not just, it happens everywhere. Whatever needs to happen, it happens for the hues that are out of gamut. That's all the ones that it'll do. Whereas the relative, it'll say it preserves color accuracy. So those portions that are in gamut remain untouched. And those portions that are out of gamut, they're chopped and just crushed down to this last little bit. Now, I usually do relative because a vast majority of my colors are already in gamut. Now, I may not be able to see them here on this screen because this screen is extremely narrow compared to both my printer and the original color space that the photo is in, which is ProPhoto. So if there's anything that's different, it's going to be because my screen is just terrible at reproducing the full color that I would rather see. So I would rather just be able to get the images out, and I know I have a lot more color available to me, capable on this printer, than what is even shown available on this screen. So I'm just not going to worry about it. I'm going to go with relative so I can maintain that color accuracy for all those in gamut colors. And then those colors that are out of gamut, they're usually very tiny and very minuscule, and I don't usually have any problems with it. All right, time to load the paper. So I've got it right here on the desk in front of me. So let's get this loaded. And now it's time to hit the print button. So I could, again, go to the printer, which brings up the same print dialog box, but I've got everything set. There's no reason to do that. All I have to do is one click, print, and then it's going to start going. So as we can see up here in the corner, it says it's preparing the print job. And so in a few moments, it's going to be moving through, and we're going to analyze it briefly once it's done. One thing I like to tell people when you get into printing yourself, if you're not a patient person already, it will hopefully teach you a little bit of patience, because the machines are always just a little bit cantankerous and picky, it seems. And it's just like, just print already. But anyway, let's be patient. And there we have it, an absolutely gorgeous print that I am definitely very proud of. And it's just something about getting ink on paper that makes it all happen. I just love it. So, who is this print going to? I don't know. Will it be yours? This is the first print out of 50 that'll be made of this item here. So there you have it. Other than this one, though, they're all made to order. So if some orders were to come in, they're going to be made as the orders come in, and I'll be, of course, tracking it otherwise along those lines with what we need to do there. All right, well, that's it for the printing. Let's get back to the slides and closing this out. All right, looking to finish it up, I always love to end with a few inspiring thoughts. And I have a verse here, Colossians 2, verse 6 from the NLT. Let your roots grow down into Him, and let your lives be built on Him. Then your faith will grow strong in the truth you were taught, and you will overflow with thankfulness. Again, that's Colossians 2, 6. And then I have this other one. It's attributed to an Asian proverb, and that's the little bit of research I did. That's all I could find on it. So let's just read it. It is better to see something once than to hear about it 1,000 times. Oh, amen. Absolutely. I love hearing about things, but I most definitely treasure the ability to go see and experience things for myself. And that is definitely very important aspect of my life. But yes, let your faith, your faith will grow strong in the truth you were taught, and you will overflow with thankfulness. That ending part, and you will overflow with thankfulness. That's what I wanted to kind of dive into just a little bit here. Thanksgiving in the U.S. is right around the corner, and certainly I believe I tend to be an eternal optimist in many aspects of life anyway. I believe there's always something to be thankful for. There's also tons to be prayerful for. May we be rooted in things that are good and righteous, and may we spread that goodness to others. May we be willing to forgive, and may we always be thankful for the ability to make wonderful photographs in the great outdoors. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and thank you for listening, and thank you for signing up to be a part of the email list so you can get these notifications. You can be one of the first ones to get these notifications when these new prints are released. You'll be able to read about the story. You'll be able to see the little bit of the background info, and of course the design and creativity ideals that are coming forth in that whole notion, in that whole item. In the next episode, I'm going to be looking to start teaching a little bit on that whole notion of design and creativity in photography. And then for December 1, we're going to have our next image. And quite frankly, I don't know what that's going to be yet. We'll have to see. I do have some images figured out as to what my next ones will be. But as far as specifically which one will be, I don't know yet. Those are yet to be decided. All right. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Until next time, God bless and happy shooting.